Hi, I'm Bob Hill. I'm the president of the Church of Scientology Mission of Riverdale at 308 Broadview Avenue in Toronto. This is our Sunday service. Now, are there areas of your life where you need to be more of a leader? Would you like to understand good leadership and how it can benefit your life? Today's sermon is based on the writings of Hubbard from a lecture given on 29 October 1971 called Leadership. I'm just going to read this to you. Now, before I go into that, I need you to understand that you're being bombarded daily from the universe around you, the culture around you, with things that drive your attention inward on yourself, where you tell yourself you can't do something, or you tell yourself, I'm not capable, etc., which is all a falsehood, because you are very capable. Now, a good leader, rather than allow those things to drive in your attention units, would have you working in a way or producing in a way that your attention was extroverted. So keep that in mind. So there's a great deal of mystique, or qualifications or skills that set a person or thing apart and beyond the understanding of an outsider. Now, Mr. Hubbard wrote this lecture in 29 October 1971. So keep that in mind. There's a great deal of mystique around it, connected with leadership. Now, most of the mystique is nonsense. However, it is necessary that one who leads can attract attention and that he can enthuse and interest others. So let's take a look at that. One who leads can attract attention. Okay, so you have lots of guys that can attract attention. They can get other people to listen to them. Or you can have guys that are kind of angry, yelling and screaming and threatening. They also attract attention. However, they do not enthuse and interest others. Whereas a true leader would attract attention and he can enthuse and interest others. It's a good datum, because you've probably seen leaders in the world or people who are considered leaders, and you look at the guy and he was just an angry, wild guy. However, he didn't enthuse and interest others, so his leadership was short term, because there's only so much you can get out of that. So keep that in mind. There's three things. He can attract attention, or she, and they can enthuse and interest others. So a common denominator to all good executives is the ability to communicate, can communicate to anyone, talk about things freely, to have affinity for their area, a liking, a form of liking, and their people, and to be able to achieve a reality on existing circumstances. Now, you've heard it said by some leaders, people are not really worth it, and you've got to demand of them, and you got to force them to do things. Well, these are not good leaders if that's the affinity level they have for the people around them. They're not really that good at executives. So you say, well, I've seen these guys and they make all kinds of money and stuff, but are they good executives? Whereas you get you get a guy like Nelson Mandela, for example. Gentle guy, got a nation out of apartheid, went to prison, spent years in prison. But he came out, he was a leader. He was a leader during his time in the prison and out. And he just calmly liked people. Even the guys that were guilty of crimes during apartheid, he allowed them to basically not be held in contempt for their crimes. In other words, he gave an amnesty as part of his leadership. And of course, He's probably one of the greatest leaders we've ever seen in our time. He had a great understanding of people. He had reality, and he knew about existing circumstances. Now, Hubbard, you can also look at him, Ron Hubbard, the guy who writes all this stuff, as being a leader himself, in that he had an affinity for people. He had a great ability to communicate. I mean, you listen to everything he puts out. He could achieve reality with people on existing circumstances, and they understood him. These are leaders. These are the real leaders. All this adds up to understanding. An executive who lacks these qualities or abilities is not likely to be very successful. Understanding added to competence is probably the most ideal character of an executive. So you got that? Understanding added to competence is probably the most ideal character of an executive. In all great leaders, there is a purpose and intensity which is unmistakable. Plus, there is a certain amount of courage required in a leader. Now, you could take a guy like, well, let's say Winston Churchill. World War II, you had Hitler, who was a raving lunatic, slaughtering people. However, he forced people to do things, so he was considered the leader of the Nazis. However, he was a terrible leader. He operated off threat and duress. Winston Churchill comes along and says, you know, we need to confront this evil. We need to face it. As a nation, we need to tackle it. So you have a small country like England, in comparison to Germany and the rest of Europe. It's very small, but extremely powerful, because it had this leader who could rally the people to stand up and face this incredible onslaught of evil. And he had the courage required himself to do that. So he's an example of a good leader at that time. Now, you could maybe question it after. You could say all kinds of things about him, but at the time he was a very good leader. And we've seen that throughout history on lesser terms, in our own countries and in various things that happen in society. There's always one guy that'll rise up as a leader, and you'll find that he has a great affinity for people. He understands people. He can duplicate where they're at, and he sees existing circumstances and has the courage to face them. Those are good leaders. So others follow those who have the courage to get things done, even though they say they follow those they like. So others, they'll tell you they'll follow people who get things done, but they'll say, well, I like the guy. That's why. So others follow those who have the courage to get things done, even though they say they follow those they like. So let's pretend you had a leader and he didn't really get anything done, but he was well liked. People aren't necessarily going to follow that guy. But the guy who can get things done and is well liked, that's the guy they'll follow. A broad examination of history shows clearly that men follow those they respect. Respect is a recognition of inspiration, purpose, and competence. So if you want to gain respect, rise up, inspire people around you, show that you have a strong purpose and you're very competent at what you do, and you'll become a leader overnight. There you go. Now that's it for today's briefing. So you can think of good leaders you know as part of this. Did they attract your attention and make you interested in doing something? Think of people that can communicate really well. Perhaps Winston Churchill, as I mentioned earlier, or Nelson Mandela? I mentioned him earlier as well. Did they love their areas and help others to achieve reality on what was needed and then create change? Yes, of course they did. All right, that's it for the sermon. I will now read to you the prayer for total freedom. May the author of the universe enable all men to reach an understanding of their spiritual nature. May awareness and understanding of life expand so that all may come to know the author of the universe, and may others also reach this understanding which brings total freedom. At this time, we think of those whose liberty is threatened, of those who have suffered imprisonment for their beliefs, of those who are enslaved or martyred, and for all those who are brutalized, trapped, or attacked. We pray that human rights will be preserved so that all people may believe and worship freely, so that freedom will once again be seen in our land. Freedom from war and poverty and want, freedom to be, freedom to do, and freedom to have. Freedom to use and understand man's potential, a potential that is God-given and God-like, and freedom to achieve that understanding and awareness that is total freedom. May God let it be so. So there you go. So do you have the courage to lead others? What would you like to improve in your world, and how can you make it happen? Take some time to respect those that lead. Help yourself and others as much as you can, and join us next Sunday for our next sermon. Thank you.